Kia ora koutou. Welcome to When Things Don't Go to Plan, Real Stories of Financial Shocks and Recovery, the first of 2 free Money Month webinars hosted by Sorted. I'm Kate Hanna, Stakeholder Lead at Te Ara Ahunga Ora Retirement Commission, and I work alongside organisations, communities and leaders across Aotearoa to support financial capability and wellbeing, and I'm really pleased to be your host for today's conversation. Thanks so much for joining us at lunchtime as we explore what financial shocks can look like, what helps people get through them, and how we can build greater financial resilience for whatever life brings. First of all, I'm going to start us off with a karakia, one of my favourites. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia makinakina ki uta, kia mataratara ki tai, e hi aki ana te ata kura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihei mauri ora. This year, Money Month is focused on one simple but important idea, building a buffer. People often think about savings as something we might get to one day when life feels a bit more stable or when there's a bit more money left over at the end of the week. But the reality is that unexpected events can happen to anyone. So today's about recognising that life doesn't always go to plan and exploring what helps people navigate those moments when it doesn't. It's also about reminding ourselves that resilience is really something that we build alone. Whānau, friends, communities, trusted advice, practical support, and sometimes simply having someone to talk to can all make a huge difference. I'm really delighted to be joined by 3 wonderful panellists who are bringing great perspectives to this conversation today. We've got Emma Lessiter from She's Worth It, who'll be sharing her lived experience of navigating financial challenges and talking about what she's learnt and what she's taught others along the way. Ange Smart is with us from Money Talks, and she brings years of experience supporting New Zealanders facing financial pressures and uncertainty, and helping people understand the options and support available to them. And Willie Leota from Fresh Money brings his experience working alongside Pacific communities where resilience, relationships and collective support can play a central role in navigating but also contributing to financial ups and downs. Together we'll be talking about what financial shocks can look like, what helps people recover, and what practical lessons we can all take away, whether we're currently facing a challenge or simply thinking about how to prepare for the future. Thank you all for being here. Before we get started, a reminder that you're always welcome to throw any questions or comments where you're coming from into the chat, into the Q&A. We've got a team here who'll be looking through the Q&A and firing up those questions and your comments through to the 4 of us so that we can respond to them throughout today's webinar. And also wanted to let you know, pop in where you're coming from, what parts of the country are represented. First of all, I'm going to say that I'm here in Tamaki Makaurau. Ange, Emma and Willie, where are you calling in from today?
I'm calling in from Tauranga.
Kia ora.
I'm calling in from Kirikiriroa, Hamilton.
Awesome, my hometown.
Dalaflava, I'm calling in from Otatahi, Christchurch.
Awesome. So we've got the spread, we've got the country covered, nearly. So folks, so great to have you on the line and awesome to give your time so generously to help New Zealanders understand more about what it means to have a buffer. So we all know that life doesn't always go to plan. I'd love to start by asking each of you, when you hear the phrase financial shock, what first comes to mind? I'll kick off with you, Willie. What comes to mind?
Typically, it's something breaking down. Like that was kind of my upbringing. Is like things would just break, the car breaking down or whatever it was. It was just like, oh my gosh, we have to find that piece of money. But kind of today, it's more around, that the price of petrol's gone up slightly, or food bills going up, and I'm starting to think, or a lot of kind of customers I see like, oh, can I afford that? Yeah, so the shocks look a lot different from in my world than what they used to.
Yeah, that's really interesting. We've had a washing machine breakdown in the last couple of weeks, and yeah, the breaking down thing is definitely something, but it's interesting to hear that people are struggling to cover off regular bills now.
Yeah.
We're seeing a bit more of that. How about you, Emma? When you hear the phrase financial shock, what comes to mind for you?
I think, well, I always put it in my own context and my own lived experience, but financial shocks for me don't always start with money. So in my case, it was the end of a relationship. But, always on my radar is things like job loss, illness, having to care for a loved one. So I feel like some big life events can very quickly become a financial event. And often those big ones, particularly relationship focused, can be accompanied by stress and trauma, which then makes the financial part even a little bit more difficult to deal with. When you're in survival mode, long-term financial decisions don't always become a priority when you're just trying to get through to the next day. And so I'm also mindful that we're in a really difficult economic environment as well. So for anyone going through life events coupled with the cost of living crisis, it's pretty tough.
Yeah, that's so true. The financial well-being and the emotional and mental well-being and spiritual well-being are all tied in with each other, and so interconnected. And from your perspective, what do you think of when you hear the words financial shock?
Yeah, a little bit following on what Willie was saying was, we used to hear the word shock. It was out of the ordinary. It was a once a year or, once a season kind of thing. But for now, it feels like for our communities, it's a shock every day. So I think it's this idea that things that weren't planned for now have to be in the budget or now have to be thought of, whereas previously it was something that you had to, endure because something might happen once a year. But now it feels like these financial shocks just feel like it's every single week.
Oh, that's so interesting to hear that people are really experiencing this on a regular basis. And I think we hear a lot of that in the media, but the reality of what that feels like is perhaps something that isn't heard so much. So this is one of the reasons why we brought you all together today. And that's, I'm going to go to you, Emma, and ask you to talk a little bit about what led to you setting up She's Worth It, why you've joined us today to talk through some of your lived experiences. And thank you so much for being so willing to share a bit of your story today.
That's fine. So back in 2020, I left an unsafe relationship. I was living overseas and I returned to New Zealand with just a suitcase and my daughter. And I'd lived overseas since my early 20s. So I was essentially coming back to Aotearoa with, rebuilding my life. And I had significant student loan debt still. I had debt from trying to move back to Aotearoa. I was recovering, I guess, from the trauma of an unsafe relationship while also being overwhelmed by the financial reality. At the time, I had only been focused on getting to a safe place. And then very quickly it hit me oh, I need some money. I need to know how to handle money. I had been financially controlled, I guess, is a way to put it. And so, yeah, it was pretty scary. And I looked around. I knew I had a lot of learning to do, but there wasn't anyone that quite fit my situation. So I set up She's Worth It really to help women with like dealing with the trauma of life events, and also the financial part of it, because financial stability, it can help a lot in giving us options. Yeah.
Thanks, Emma. And I know that that's really tough to talk about. What were some of the, you mentioned that you were obviously processing trauma and that you hadn't anticipated the financial circumstances that you were finding yourself in. What for you felt the hardest, and what was the sort of key thing that you wanted to bring to the community of She's Worth It?
I think there was definitely a sense of shame in letting myself get to that situation. So yeah, there was a lot of feelings around working around that, but the more that I looked into it, the more I felt like there were a lot of people, a lot of women or people going through that situation and perhaps didn't have a platform to talk about it. And so, it was really important to set up a community where women wouldn't feel so alone and we could feel empowered and support each other in learning about money and learning about the different ways that we could pay off debt, get a emergency fund going, learn about investing, all of those sorts of things that we're not really taught. It's definitely a lot easier these days with access to the internet, and people seem to be talking about it, but it was certainly nothing that I grew up learning about.
Yeah, and I think thank you so much for mentioning the shame, and that's something that we've talked about when we met earlier to discuss what we were going to talk about today, wasn't it, Emma, Willie, and Ange? That the whakama, the shame, is a really big part of what prevents people from engaging with help or engaging with issues around building a bit of a buffer. And so I did want to flick to you, Ange, and ask you about what stands out from Emma's story to you? What are the things that you see when you're talking to people across Money Talks, you and your team?
So what Emma was saying about the idea that she all of a sudden needed to know how to do this and feeling really unprepared for life. But also at the same time, there is this really cool opportunity, like how we're presenting right now and what we're seeing on social media platforms, is that it's not all completely bad, and that how many of us can learn or teach and share knowledge and wisdom around, and being able to really get rid of that whakama, that shame about talking about money, talking about investing, and having an idea about, well, what can I do with my money, or what should I be doing with my money? And because we're seeing it on the lines at the moment, so many people are just surviving. They're not thriving. And in order for us to be healthy communities, healthy whānau members, is we want to be thriving. And so what are the things that we can be putting in place or having conversations about now? Just because where you are right now doesn't mean where you have to be in another, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, let alone, how many of us when we were younger thought about saving for retirement, and it seems so far away. And now, surprisingly, it doesn't feel that far away. And so being able to have conversations about money, and just because this is where you are right now and a shock has happened or life has completely turned everything on its head, it doesn't mean this is where you have to camp. And there are so many people out there and so many cool social services that can help you get through this.
Yeah, and I think that's awesome to hear about how we are starting to break down those barriers around talking about it. Really keen to bring you in now, Willie, and hear about what you're seeing out there on the ground with your Fresh Money podcast and what's happening out there. What are you seeing in your community, and what's happening, and then what's changing?
Yeah, I think it's a similar theme. That's why we started Fresh Money kind of podcast, was to break that taboo of talking about money, because our kind of kaupapa is, if we can talk about it, we can get better at using it, dealing with it, managing it, hearing from different perspectives, and how people have good, bad, different experiences. So I'm seeing the same sort of thing, that people are reaching out, people are logging in or signing up to webinars like this to learn more, really. And I think it's us as a collective in our different spheres are encouraging that and making it easier for different people to digest money concepts and topics in bite-sized forms. It doesn't matter what they look like, but they're getting different flavors of a similar sort of theme of, hey, it's good to talk about money so you can learn more about it and get better with it.
Yeah, and I think, absolutely, talking is one of the first things we can do. And the great thing, there's lots of things we can say about social media and the internet, but it does help us talk to each other more.
Yeah.
So that's a great thing. We've got people from all over the country, from Rotorua, from Palmerston North, a couple of people from Palmerston North. That's where I grew up. Great town, beautiful in the autumn. And also people talking about some of the things that are real triggers for them with financial stress. So somebody talking about how financial stress triggers their depression, so how much that's interconnected with mental health and well-being, and somebody else talking around the impact of a medical event on their financial stability, and the ideas around, even if you've got a property, then sometimes, when you need money immediately, that's not something that you can necessarily access, which kind of brings us on to this idea really about having a buffer and how important that is. And so we just want to kind of explore some of the ways in which you as individuals and as members of communities have seen people use and benefit from having an emergency fund, a bit of a buffer. So Willie, what are some of the things that you've seen have helped people recover and rebuild in the work that you do?
Yeah, what we've seen is, because like Pacific communities, it's very much a village, and that we rely and we support each other quite well. So while some people might not have that monetary buffer in their bank account, there is a buffer of community that we do tend to rely on. So if someone is in trouble or if something hits them, they're quite comfortable to reach out to a relative, to a friend, and go, hey, I'm struggling here. And then the whole community kind of pulls together to help in that sense. So while it's not, they don't have that buffer come naturally to them, because in the islands, it's, you work in the plantation, you work in the ocean, and money isn't it's developing there. So money wasn't the big system that we already had. So it's that similar sort of village life that has been brought to here to New Zealand that we still rely on here. So the buffer looks slightly different to us.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, what's interesting about that is what I hear from hearing about community and the village as being part of that buffer is that the first step is actually talking to other people about it. And asking for some help, which brings me, I'll flick to you, Emma, and what helped you move forward? You sort of built a village around yourself, didn't you?
Yeah, I guess and we talked about this briefly when we met up the other week. I think for a lot of Pākehā, we find ourselves without that village, without that community. And as a single mum, I was like, I need this. So yeah, I built what I needed, really. And that includes, helping with that knowledge about, the basic stuff like budgeting and paying off debt and all of that. But I think also like showing what is possible. When I came back, I was very quickly on the benefit, and I was like, is this all that I can manage? But there were things that I could do while I was still in that season of my life to build my financial resilience. So, yeah.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I've heard some fantastic stories similar to yours in the work that I do in working with community organisations and industry organisations. You know, one of the stories that's been really powerful when thinking about building a buffer and you know, has contributed to the building the Buffer Builder, which is this new free app that Sorted has launched this Money Month, has been thinking about how to make it easier for people to make that simple. And I had a great story from one of the organisations that we work with that works mainly with women who have been leaving domestic violence situations, Emma, and about a group of women who got together and built a buffer together. They sat down and went, we're all single parents. We've all got kids. We want those kids to be able to do things like go to school camps, like have the sports equipment that they need to play the games that they want to play. How are we going to do that? And they built, first of all, they built a $500 buffer between the 5 of them. And now they're up to like a $1,500 buffer. And they spend it and then they build it back up again collectively. And they've got a collective way of making decisions about you know, who accesses it for the car breakdown or for the school camp fees or whatever, so it's fair and equitable. And I just love hearing stories like that about how people think about how to make that community for themselves. So yeah, it's really powerful. And from the people that you're supporting at Money Talks, and feel free to give us a little bit of a background on Money Talks when you're talking through now, what tends to make the biggest difference when you and your teams are talking to people?
So, yeah, just in relation to that, Money Talks is the free financial helpline for Aotearoa, and anybody can contact us either by phone or by chat or by email or by text, whatever way you want to be able to reach out. And for us, our aim is to be a really safe place to be able to talk about all things money, because we know that not everybody has the parent, the sibling, the spouse where they feel comfortable to maybe share some of these really private ideas around what's going on in their world. And our aim is to get them to a point and a place where either they feel like they've got enough strength and courage to go and have conversations with a lender or a power company or renegotiate something, or with the people in their life where they feel like they can then communicate. Because we know that, you know, when you can actually share part of the problems, the things that are weighing you down, it really takes a lot of the burden off. And so we feel really privileged that we can be those people. We're open 7 days a week, and you know, people contact us about anything and everything. And our aim is always to be able to, help them find either a free local financial mentoring service that, you know, they may need to walk alongside with them, you know, renegotiate, have a look at all those things that's going on in their budget. Or it could just be that they've, you know, felt the burden lift, been able to have a chat, have somebody else look at their situation in a really quick way and be like, oh, actually, I am okay. Or, oh, I can go and make that phone call myself. Oh, I didn't know that I could go and ask for XYZ from the power company. And so that for us is the win, to be able to empower people to make informed decisions about their financial situation.
Awesome. And thank you so much, Ange, for explaining that out, because we've got questions or comments coming through from across the motu. And the theme is around people asking things about, you know, how do I maybe talk to my bank about mortgage rates? What do I do around, we're struggling, we're working on one salary because of financial shock. I feel like I've lost my buffer. And this is kind of reflecting some of the data and information that we have seen that people who formerly may not have gone to Money Talks for help are now, you know, seeking some support and help. So I think it's really important to acknowledge that reaching out and talking to your bank, whoever you own debt to, anyone that you can speak to, financial mentoring organisations, budgeting services, reaching out to Money Talks for that support of knowing what you can ask for and how you can go about doing those things is really very much the first step in making those practical actions. It takes time, but information is the most powerful thing. We've got a specific question about, is a side hustle worth it in the long run to have extra money to save? And I think we've got some great resources on the Sorted website, and I'm sure the team will chuck some of them into the chat for you, Kimberly. But in general, often it can be quite a good thing, but there are tax implications, et cetera, and sometimes it takes a while to get the side hustle going. So it's good to listen in, and I mean, there's some great podcasts out there, including Willie's, where you can hear about people who've done similar things. I think going out there and seeking information from trusted sources is such a great way of figuring out that you're not alone in this and that lots of people are feeling the same way you are. And that you can then make some better choices. And so I wanted to get back, folks, as we kind of move into the second half of the webinar, to be thinking about what it looks like to actually build a buffer. And I'll go back to you, Emma, thinking about your previous self, your younger self, messages to your younger self, what are the things that really worked? I'm thinking about, starting small, starting early, those sorts of ideas. Tell us a bit about what you might say to your younger self. And be kind to your younger self. We should always be kind to our younger selves.
Yeah, 100%. I think if I'm thinking about what a buffer would mean to my younger self, I think it would just say it gives you options. It gives you the options to leave an unsafe job where, if it's a toxic work environment, it gives you the options to leave an unsafe relationship. It gives you the options to even help people that you love. Some of us have occasions where our friends or family would have a financial shock as well, and having a bigger buffer allows you to, with love, to support your friends and whānau as well. And those are the main things, I think. And it doesn't, I think I'd have to tell myself that it doesn't need to be a specific figure, because I think that can be quite overwhelming when you're starting out. You quite often hear from the likes of Dave Ramsey, start with $1,000. But I remember even $1,000 was a huge amount of money, and when you're on the benefit trying to save. And so I think just putting the framework in place, putting the structure in terms of your budget, that, even if it's $1 or $2 is all you can spare to go towards an emergency fund, having that structure in place is more important than the actual figure when you're getting started.
Yeah, I think, that the journey is more important than the goal in the beginning. Is such an important way of thinking about what it is like to build a buffer. And from your experience in your role, what is it like for people when they have access to something like that, when they've got a little bit of saving that they can use for when things break down, when people need help, or when bills are higher? What does it feel like for people?
Just like Emma said, it's options. It's that freedom of knowing that basically you can sleep at night. And I know in the investing world, there is a conversation around the sleep at night investment strategy. And what are the decisions that we are making now that enable us to be able to sleep through the night and not worry? And for many of us, it's around being able to sometimes say no to the now in order to be able to say yes in the future. And, if I think back to my younger self, what would I be saying? It was don't buy stuff to impress other people or anything, because it's not them that's going to come and pay the bill that fixes your car. It's not going to be them that comes and, re-roofs your house or anything like that. Like the way that we've got these entire marketing machines that are built on trying to alleviate us of money. So every time you can say no to that one thing that, you are being bombarded to spend your money on. And imagine if you put that into your savings or into even a buffer and have a look at it at the end of the week. You will be surprised at how great you will feel when you know that you've got that, because how many of these things that we've gone and bought are gone, eaten, drunk, it's gone within the week or two. And there is nothing more comforting than being able to know that if your kid needs something specific for school, you know what? I can do that. If there's a neighbor you want to be able to bless, awesome. I can do that too. And it's around those options.
Yeah, I mean, I think hearing you say that and hearing from you, Emma, and I'll go to you in a minute, Willie, it sounds like one of the things that a buffer does for people is it lets them be who they really want to be. The family member, the friend, the colleague that they want to be able to be, because it's that peace of mind, but also the being able to be generous or kind or bless people when that's needed. And I want to talk about that, Willie, in the communities that you often are in. What does that look like, and how does that feel to be able to meet some cultural expectations in a way that works for you?
Yeah, it's the same sort of thing. Like it provides you with peace, like peace in your mind, peace in your heart, that you can make decisions and you have time. Like you there's no pressure on you to, oh my gosh, I've got to do this, and this now. You're actually when a lovey or a time to give to family comes, you've actually got this amount of money and you're not stressing out about it. And then you can make clear decisions.
Yeah.
And I think that's important, is making decisions without the stress attached to it, because you're going to make decisions you're going to be reactive, as opposed to actually, I'm good. I'm winning here. My decision making is going to be clearer, and it's going to be aligned with my values and how I would normally make decisions, as opposed to rush decision or a pressurized one. Yeah. So yeah, and going back to speaking to my younger self, I think that we still need an understanding of where we are in the timeline of our lives. Early on, like when our kids were young, like 2, 5, life was intense. Like I was working, my wife was, our choice to have her stay at home and be with the kids. Every dollar was accounted for, and it was at the end of the fortnight, we'd have, $50 left over to go into that buffer. But I understood, because I had seen different people in the bank that I was working for. I could see that in your 30s it's different. In your 40s you're earning the most income that you probably ever will in your entire lifetime. So this was a moment in time, and it felt like it was going to be forever, because the kids were just like demanding all our energy. So I think there needs to be that awareness that, yes, I'm in this intense moment, but it's not going to be this way forever. So the slow and steady we're going to win. Like slow and steady does win the race. So that $50 a fortnight that we're saving is progress.
Yeah, and I think that's an amazing part of the thing about talking about it, right, Willie, is because unless we know that that's actually, you obviously observed it in the bank where you were working, that this was a lived experience of your colleagues and stuff. If you don't know that, then you might feel like this is forever. And Ange has talked about that, and so has Emma. Like, this moment that you're in doesn't have to define you, and you can think about that in ways and work on in ways that help move you through to next stages. Particularly if you can put a little bit aside into that buffer space. So I'm a really hopeful person. It's like I'm a Pollyanna. It's one of my either great or terrible characteristics, I don't know, in any given day. So I'm always looking ahead and thinking about what are the things that give us hope. When we're talking through this really quite stressful topic about money and around financial resilience. And so, Ange, what are the things that bring you hope, and what do you wish everyone knew, like, about having a financial setback or a series of financial setbacks, or feeling like life is a constant barrage of financial setbacks?
I would say that how lucky are we to be living in the here and now, where we've never had such a better place to be able to be openly vulnerable, talk about money, talk about things, and there are so many options that we can help you find, we can help connect you with. There are options. And so to me, when I say, yes, a Pollyanna, is there is help out there. And the biggest hurdle is actually the reaching out. And for us, that's why it's so important that every interaction is treated with such respect and honor, because we know how hard it is to pick up that phone and be super vulnerable. And, you find out that's why people don't really want to talk on the phones with banks and stuff like that, because there's still a lot of shame around saying, I can't afford that this week. And so they'd much rather use web chats and things like that. And to be honest, if that's the way that people can communicate, then it's a call out to organizations to make sure that they are offering these options, because we need to meet people with where they're at right now. And so I think, we have lots of opportunities, and I just always encourage people to reach out to either your local financial mentor, somebody like us at Money Talks, because we will help you connect with the right people to make a plan. You are never stuck in the here and now. And I know so many people say one of the best parts about being with a financial mentor is actually just feeling like you've got someone on your side, and having someone that you can talk to, call, email, just to know that, they've got you. They are your advocate, and you never, ever will be back in this place where you are on your own and feel like you're carrying the burden completely by yourself.
That is super hopeful, because there are people and there's information. I just want to remind everybody who's listening in that you can pop anything you want to ask or any comments you have into the Q&A, and I'll bring them to Ange, Emma and Willie. So jump on in while we're talking through. So Emma, thinking about what gives you hope, and also, broadly, but also what financial resilience means to you now. What as you're going through.
I think what gives me hope is now that I have knowledge that regardless of what financial shocks come my way, I could rebuild, like I've started from zero. If I lost my job tomorrow, I know I've got knowledge in terms of financial capability and stuff that it's not going anywhere. So I think, learning as much as you can is something that's really going to help you learn to trust yourself. And something that I was thinking about is, like when you're starting out, you're not going to be confident with money. It's kind of scary, especially when it comes to like investing and deciding, like, do I pay off debt? Do I start investing? What about my retirement? Like, there's a lot of things in the mix to consider, but each small action that we take, the confidence grows. So when we start out, yeah, just know that doing those things to empower yourself, it really helps to get you to a point where you feel more confident about your money. And also some things that you guys were talking about in terms of, you know, I think just surrounding yourself around other people, and it may be that you just listen to podcasts or you listen to other financial educators to get an idea of what's possible for your life. And your life might look different from somebody else's, you know, like honestly, like side hustles is kind of a triggering thing for me and a lot of single mums, because I don't have time to be doing a side hustle. But, you know, I'm still going to listen and hear what people have to say about side hustles and not just completely discount something because it doesn't look like my life. Because as Willie said, I'm in a season of my life where my child demands a lot of my attention, but there might come a time where I have more time to dedicate to a side hustle. So I think it's just being curious about your situation, curious about what the solutions could look like for you, and learning as much as you can. And I guess being inspired by other people's journeys without comparing. I think that was kind of hard for me when I came back. You know, I was in my late 30s, starting from scratch. All my mates from back at uni had houses and, you know, were talking about their net worths and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, mine's minus a lot. But you don't stay in that shame spiral. Just yeah, look for the solutions that would fit your situation and be inspired by other people's journeys.
I think that's so important for us to use that idea of seasons. Thanks for bringing that, Willie. It's a great way to reflect on our lives and to think about where we're at all times. I've got a whole bunch of really good questions coming through, so I'm going to go to those questions before I go to you, Willie, around what gives you hope. So you've got lots of time to think of a really great answer. So people are asking about the app that I just mentioned. So Buffer Builder is a free app. We've posted the link to it in the chat, folks, so you can go through there. It's on the sorted.org.nz website. We've worked on it together at the Retirement Commission, Sorted, alongside Christians Against Poverty, Akahu, and the Simplicity Foundation. Please go and download it. It's available in the Apple Store and also in the Android Store. It's free to use, and it's got 3 ways that you can save into your buffer. You can do it through a percentage or regular top-up every time you get paid. You can do it by topping up, rounding up when you spend, and you can do it by doing manual transfers. So 3 ways to save. So please go and have a look, everybody. That was a question that came through. And then another question asking about, do you put the emergency funds in a savings account, or is there a smarter place to earn from it? The suggestion that we make, and you can have a look at how to build an emergency fund, which is another link that has been posted into the chat, is that you set it up a savings account in a different bank from the main bank that you normally bank with. So it's a little bit harder to get to, a little bit more secret, a little bit over there. So you can't just transfer between. Call it, you know, your buffer, your emergency savings, your rainy day fund. It's great how the banks these days have those names that you can assign to different accounts. Like my son, who is about to turn 24, has an account that's called Tattoo, which is where he puts his savings for his various tattoos. You can, you know, these are important things that you do. One of my other children has an account called Paris. You can understand what that account is for. So use these things as a way to help you identify where you're going. And when you're building the buffer, keep it somewhere where you can access it. You need to be able to access it within 24 hours, because when an emergency does actually hit, it is important to spend. And that's one of the questions that we've also had come through. Somebody asking me about how the group of friends who pulled their money together and decided what to spend their emergency fund on. So how do we decide what is an emergency? And this is such an important question that I want to actually go out to you folks all with that. before we go to Willie for his hopeful statements, because what we say here at the Commission is that you define what the emergency is, and the point of having an emergency fund is that you will spend it when it needs to be spent, and then you'll go and build it back up again. Ange, Emma, Willie, got any comments on what's an emergency?
My answer to that would be something that's not already accounted for within the budget.
Yeah.
So something that's out of the norm, whether it brings you joy or whether it brings you peace. That's the conversation, being that it could be the peace of knowing that, yep, your car's going to pass its warrant because you've had to go and fix these whatever parts on it, or it's that you've been invited to go away with some friends for a weekend, share all the costs, and you're like, you know what, actually that's going to bring me some really amazing joy right now. I haven't accounted for it, but I know that I can rebuild my fund next time, because we are not just one being. We are physical, mental, spiritual, culture, it's all of what is it that is an emergency. Might be a little bit outside the norm, but for me, I think it's really important that we take care of ourselves as well.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I guess for me, when I was setting up my emergency fund, I really wanted it to focus on emergencies. And at the beginning, I was really, really strict on myself. So it was only like if the car needs repairs, if the washing machine broke down, like I had this list of criteria. And then I kind of found out, geez, this really, like, life kind of sucks when you don't build in a little bit of like fun money. So like Ange says, I think it now it's okay to do that, because especially if you've been through a traumatic event, like you've got to find ways to find joy and be okay with spending the emergency fund, which is there, which I know can really help regulate your nervous system, but being okay with spending it, because that's what it's there to be spent when you need it. It's not there to always be this, I guess, emergency backstop that's got you sense of safety. It's there to be spent when you need it.
Yeah, I think that regulation of the nervous system is quite an important part of it. Hey, Willie?
I think those are both great. Nothing to add to those kind of definitions. Nailed it.
Awesome. Okay, we've got a couple of other questions, and then we'll close off and we'll get Willie to talk about what brings them hope. I'm going to bring this one to you, Willie. Coming from a background where money talks is taboo, what is one thing you would suggest to that someone who is not keen to show their vulnerability but does want to start a buffer? How would you recommend they approach that?
Oh. That, like, if someone isn't keen, then it would be a discussion around it, around what their level of comfort of talking about money is. Because I think you can't actually, like, in the beginning, like my wife and I, when we couldn't actually force each other to talk about certain parts we weren't comfortable with. So what we did talk about was things we were comfortable. Like, there was areas culturally of whālawe that my wife, who is Pākehā, wasn't comfortable in the beginning to talk about. So that was an area of tension for a long period of time. But over time, as she understood, and we lived in Samoa for 12 months, and as she understood the culture more and more, it became like, that's how you do things. And like, yeah, I'm not trying to be difficult. This is just who I am. And vice versa as well, understanding parts of her culture that I didn't get in the start. So I think it does take time. It does take perseverance and a bit of tenacity. But yeah, it will be a slow, kind of gradual, consistent conversation that you need to take subtly to begin with. Yeah.
Yeah,
But eventually, it'll be a brick by brick type thing.
and being in relationship with people is a good way to have all of those different sorts of conversations.
Yeah.
And we've got people contributing about how they started with 500 and then have moved up to different targets. So, there's lots of different ways that we can do that. I've got one question around what should I do to get started? And I don't have any family or friends that can help me. And I guess, Ange, this is where we'd say just start with just even if it was $1 or $2, like Emma talked about before, would be a great place to start with that account. Use Buffer Builder or make your own account. Any other suggestions?
Something that I saw recently was there was a conversation here in Tauranga around a social supermarket that was more than happy to have someone come in, do their shopping at the social supermarket for the week in order for that person to be able to put what they had available for their food budget, even if it was only $50, away into their savings. And I think how cool are our community organisations that are doing everything they can to make sure that, where possible, that they can add to the, the scaffolding of being able to create these ways and pathways of being able to put some money aside. And there's conversations around being able to talk to power companies and rebates and rates rebates, because we know rates aren't going down. Being able to go and have those conversations and know where there are different opportunities and being able to go and put those dollars that you had thought you had to already pay to set aside. And to be honest, we've all got stuff in our house that we could probably on sell, even if it's just to make a $50 buffer. Choose one thing each week to try and sell.
Yeah, that's definitely something I could probably do. There's quite a lot of stuff in my house. It's probably unnecessary. I'm going to start thinking about winding us up now, and I want to go back to Willie and say, what are the things that really give you hope, particularly in your communities? And we do have a question which is related to that. So a question that's asking you whether the money talanoa is shifting. Do you see it shifting and sort of how that is manifesting itself? Yeah,
absolutely. That's the fact that it's shifting is what's giving me the biggest hope. That's what I'm seeing the most. From 2 years ago when we started the podcast, there was a few inquiries, people asking us questions. That has probably multiplied by 5. 5 times the number of inquiries we're getting around different topics, investment, debt, budgeting. That's what is giving me the most hope, that people are super keen to learn, are super keen to change their own financial position, and therefore changing their family's trajectory of their financial futures, and then their kids, and then having hope for their grandkids as well. That is giving me the most hope at the moment, that people are asking the question, because it's that first step, like what Ange was saying. That is the hardest part, but it's being vulnerable to ask someone for help. If you can ask for help, you're winning.
Yeah, I think that's such an amazing way of thinking about it, and the idea that we've got so much more access to information. People are asking questions around what to do when somebody passes away, and questions around trends and different groups of people starting different age groups and demographics. And I think that the really clear thing is that, I guess I would say this, but sorted.org.nz is a really amazing place to go for information like that about, things like making sure that if family members are in the right age group where they might be, their death might be something that could be thought about, then you need to be thinking about having wills and powers of attorney in place. There are measures of financial resilience and well-being that we talk about in this world, and that are really critical and important, and you can go to Sorted. Natasha's just posted the link to Sorted into the chat, which is really, really helpful. But there are also a lot of great other resources, which is why it's been fantastic to have, Willie, Ange and Emma, who all represent some of those great resources and ways in which we can open up this conversation. And the good news is that while people, fewer than, I think it's 52% of New Zealanders now have some kind of buffer, we are seeing that is growing from last year, but that younger people are less likely to have a buffer. So this is an important conversation for us to be having with our young people at a time that, they are experiencing a difficult start in the adult world, I guess you could say. So I really want to thank our panellists, Emma, Ange and Willie, for sharing their experiences, insights and wisdom today. I think we can say that there's been some really strong themes coming through around talking to each other and asking for help, and how important that is, and that actually everybody experiences financial shocks. And so this needs to just really be normalised, and we should reach out for help when we can. And we've also really heard that financial resilience and wellbeing isn't something that we build on our own. It's really collective. Our whānau, our aiga, our friends, our communities, trusted people and support services all have a really important role to play. And that asking for help is actually a sign of strength, because you want to make those changes. It was amazing, Willie, to have you talk about that intergenerational change, because that's so motivating for people. And there is a lot of support available when life doesn't go according to plan. So as Money Month continues for the rest of August, please do explore the resources available through Sorted. Continue to have conversations with people around you. Become the person who asks people awkward questions like, do you have emergency savings? How is your KiwiSaver doing? What kind of fund are you in? Be that person.
Yeah.
And think about what you can do to build your own buffer. We've had some people ask really pertinent questions today, and I would encourage you to explore the How to Build an Emergency Savings Fund guide on Sorted, and also have a play around with Buffer Builder, both of which are designed to make it really easy for you to build a buffer starting from where you are at, based on your circumstances. So thank you all for joining us today. There is another webinar taking place on the 25th of August. Please sign up for that, where we'll be talking in more detail about Buffer Builder and how it works and operates, and supporting you through some tips and tricks for navigating this time, this season that we're all in. And our different experiences of it. Somebody is off to build their buffer. They're saying ngā mihi nui to all of today's presenters, which is great. We love to hear that. And I just really thank everybody, the panellists, and also all of you participants who've been listening, for your generosity and openness. Kia pai tō rā, and thank you for being part of the conversation. I'll close this off with a karakia, and then we'll go back to our work days or our calm days, whatever's happening. Ona hia, ona hia, ona hia ki te uru tapu nui, kia wātia, kia māma, kia nākau te tinana te wairua, e te ara takatū, koia rā I rongo, whakaaria aki ki ronga, ki tina, hui e, tai ki e. Ngā mihi nui, and thank you.